Hey guys, in this video I'm just going to go over what was added to QuestMap Pro in version 1.2. As with the last update, I will link to the written version of this update, which goes over everything I'm going to cover here, as well as a few extra bits and pieces. But let's jump into the engine. So the first thing I want to demonstrate is a filter widget on the world map. So if I just jump out of here, and we're going to jump down and just place a waypoint here, player note here, and then we've got two landmarks nearby as well. So this gives us a couple of things to look at. So if you've got the widget filter widget enabled, down here you'll notice this filter icon, and click that up and we get a nice little animation, and you can see at the moment everything is enabled. If we hide landmarks, the landmarks disappear, turn them back on, they reappear. So we've got no points of interest or NPCs nearby, player notes, quests, we don't have a quest nearby, and we don't have a waypoint. So now everything is hidden and you can reset it. So that's all pretty straightforward, pretty common feature to have with these systems. But let's jump into the controller and we'll have a look at the settings associated with this. So if we go to the map manager and we go into configuration, world map configuration, we've got three settings down here, which is just the ability to disable the filters. If you just disable it, the widget will not appear there. And the fade in and fade out time is currently set to half a second. You can change that if you want it instant. You can set it to 0, and just the backing color as well. Now, if you were to say, for instance, disable landmarks, the filter widget will automatically not have landmarks on here. So it automatically resizes. It'll only show the things you have enabled on your world map. So that is that one there. The next system I want to show off is the ability for players to place a landmark without using the map. Sorry, not a landmark, a waypoint. So this is often called ping, and that's what I've called it in here as well. But this is very common in multiplayer games and such. The ability to just place a waypoint by looking and pressing a button. In the demo here, it's bound to the middle mouse button, but you can set it up to whatever you want, and that will just place a completely normal landmark. So you can go in and disable it, you can delete it the normal way, and all that sort of thing. And obviously, if you've got navigation trails set up, it will work with them as well. Again, we've got settings for that. If we jump into the manager here, we can go down under the waypoint section, and you've got the ability to enable and disable the ping. You can set the maximum distance that players can set the ping at, and then you also can use sticky waypoints. Now, if you're unaware, sticky waypoints is a system where when you place a waypoint near a landmark, it will automatically put it on the landmark instead within this radius. It feels a little bit weird to have that enabled with pinging, but I figured I can put it there as an option, so why not? Now, other than that, we've got some other things. I'll just jump back in here one last time. And I'm just gonna get up to a landmark that is undiscovered to demonstrate this one. Now, there's been a feedback event for discovering landmarks in the demo the entire time, but I've expanded that. So you're gonna see there's a landmark where I've got landmarks disabled on the map. That's why. Okay, there's a landmark right here. You can see it on the compass. But it's right here, and I'm about to discover it. And you're going to see, as I discover it, up the top right here, I've got the demo UI set up to give some feedback. So there we go. It says location discovered. And just before I forget, I'm just going to turn landmarks back on. So that is a thing that's built into the demo UI. That's not really included in QuestMap. But what I've done is I've set up these events here for similar things to make it really easy to hook up. So in this case, all it does is just feeds the name to the landmark event, which is in my HUD. And you can see you've got as much options here as you want, as much information here as you could need. So if you want to have it pop up with an icon as well as the name, use the landmark's color, all that sort of thing, you can do. I've set up similar events for the walking in and out of hidden object zones, so you might want to have it start playing a sound when you enter a hidden object and then stop when the player leaves, something like that. We've got the same one for when you reach a waypoint, and then finally one also for when you enter and exit a quest area. So in the demo, these are just set up to print strings. Oops. But hopefully, as you can see there, you can see it's very simple to set up to do whatever you want. I mean, a lot of games have it so when you discover landmarks, you get XP, so that would be a way to hook up this. The next thing I want to do is take a look at the editor utility widgets that have been set up. So if you jump into the quest map folder here, there's now these two utility widgets here. Now one of them is very straightforward. Unfortunately, if you double click these, it opens them up in the widget editor. But if you right click and hit run editor utility widget, you can see here we've got a widget that basically just links straight to all the tutorials, both the written and the video versions. So that's just a really easy in-engine version, in-engine way for you guys to get to documentation. There's also a generic documentation button down here. The other one, however, is much more useful. So I'm going to run out of the utility widget. And we've got a system here that allows us to check the status of Quest Map Pro setup in our world. So there's a bunch of things in integration that you have to add to your world. For instance, in one of the very early stages, you have to add this guy here, the map helper. And that is used to configure a bunch of things like how big your world is, where the northwest and southeastern corners are, so you can do all the maths and stuff. Also, the system can do the maths for you. And if you have not got that, Quest Map just straight up won't work. So this button here allows you to check and make sure that's all configured. So if I just delete this, it's going to say there's no map added. I need to actually set that up to refresh that. But if we add it back in, there. If we have two of them, which you don't want, it'll tell you that there are too many. Similarly, the location manager it'll tell you if you've got a location manager. Now, you don't strictly need a location manager, but it's most likely going to be useful in most cases. Basically, the location manager lets you determine a set of landmarks that the player knows about at the beginning of the game. It'll tell you how many it's managing as well. Same thing, if you've got two of them, it's going to tell you there's multiple, there should only be one. And we can delete that. I'll leave that one. No, I'll delete that one. Now, the next section is landmarks. Now, this is actually going to be probably the most useful bit for a lot of developers, because you can imagine in a system, say you're making an open world game or just a world with a lot of locations in it. To add a location, what you want to do is you want to add the actor in. And now, I can't get around that. That has to be done. But then you've got to go through settle up and do all your settings, and then on top of that you probably want to add a navigation point. That is where the quest trail is going to go to if you have this set as a waypoint. And you also want to set up a travel point, which is if you're going to fast travel to that location, where you spawn. So you can see the one here, got the one here, just spawns you looking out over the lake. When you've added hundreds of locations potentially, you probably are going to roll your eyes at the concept of going through and adding all these. That's where this comes in helpful. So you can hit check. Now, it may take a second or two to check them all in a large world with a lot of locations, but once that is done, you can hit add travel points and add nav points, and any location that should have them will be added. So for travel points, it will only add them if can fast travel to is enabled, because if you can't fast travel to a location, the travel point is not useful. So if we jump over to this one here, which I happen to know has no travel point. Now, there's an option here to use navigation. Other than that, it will use a line trace. I'm going to set out, release a separate video that goes through in detail how this all works. But this is just to give you a quick idea. But hit add travel points. You can see it's added one here. It's used navigation. P. It's made sure that we're in an area where the player can actually be. These trees have no collision, so it's a bit easy for this one. And it's made it so it's spawned facing the middle of the location. I'm just going to undo that. And then the other one is nav points, which is similar. Let's jump over to the beach here. So when you set a waypoint, if I just jump into the world, and I right click on the beach, the place that this waypoint actually goes through is determined by that nav point. The reason for this is if you have, let's say instead of this being a beach, there's a house there and there's a garden, and at the front of the garden is a gate. You might specifically want that gate to be where your waypoint is and where this trail goes to. That's what a nav point does. So the system here will also go through and add nav points for all of them. They're, again, probably going to have to be customized. Same with the travel points. You might not like where it puts it, but it gives you a way to get the very basic going so you can have everything up and running. Beyond that, you can also count how many points of interest and how many hidden objects are in your scene just for interest. And then there's this invalid actors check. So Again, we saw before we shouldn't have multiple map helpers. If we hit this, it's going to tell you have 2 actors. Once, if it detects there is a problem, it gives an option to fix. Now, in a lot of these, it's very simple. Character helpers, there should be none. It just deletes them. Navigation helper just deletes them. Same with these ones. These shouldn't be placed in the world. Rogue travel points is if you add one of those travel points that we have here, and it's not actually hooked up to a landmark, that's what it's looking for there. So it'll delete any of those that shouldn't be in the world. For the location manager and map helper, there's a little bit of a process that goes on where it checks. Now you can see this is the one that I just added. There's no information set in here. We don't have a world size, these aren't set, and there's no info in the tier zoom data. This one here, which is set up to be used, has all that information filled out. So what this fix button will actually do is go through and look for the one it believes is the most likely to actually be the one you've set up yourself and deletes all the others. So if I hit fix, it deletes that one. Now, this is not a foolproof. There is a potential you're going to delete the wrong one. I would strongly recommend, as it's written down here, that if you're not sure of things being right, then use this as information, maybe do the fixes yourself. But it at least gives you a way to identify problems. Now, beyond that, there's a couple of other things that were added in the update, and they are just ways to make the system more compatible with other marketplace products and systems. So the main example of this is if we jump into the controller once more, there is this function here, which is just in the manager, which allows you to reinitialize QuestMap Pro. Now, in a lot of cases, you're not going to need this because if your player dies, they're just going to reload a save and the world's going to start over again. However, in multiplayer persistent worlds, there was an issue where, depending on how you've set things up, QuestMap Pro would need to be reinitialized, and it wasn't configured for that. So all we've done here is I've built a function that resets every single variable in memory for QuestMap Pro, and then goes through the initialization again. Very simple setup, but it was tripping up a few people already. Hopefully that's all pretty helpful. I don't think there's anything else. Oh, there is actually. To go along with this, you also probably want to disable destroy helper actors, because that will stop these guys, so the map helper and the location manager, from being deleted on startup. If you're using it in a single player game, or you're storing all the data that they give in a save game and loading that when players respawn, you won't need that, but it's there if you do need it. Anyway, hopefully that's gone through enough detail here. Like I said, there will be a full detail video on the troubleshooter widget. And other than that, thank you very much for watching. Have a nice day.